Hey, so it's day 19 of the 30 days of prayer and fasting with the Radical Youth as part of God's Vineyard Ministries. The prayer point for today is to receive the power of God to rejoice and be favoured in your business and career in this year 2014, beyond your imagination. If we look at the story of Elizabeth in Luke, she was definitely somebody who rejoiced in her favour. In Luke 1:25 she says, "The Lord has done this for me," she said. "In these days he has shown his favour and taken away my disgrace among the people." Elizabeth had conceived and was to give birth to a child that she thought she would never have. Elizabeth was a woman barren for years. Her and her husband Zechariah were unable to have a child because she was unable to conceive. However, God granted her a child in her old age. I won't tell the whole story, but angels appeared to both Zechariah and Elizabeth, and there was a bit of a twist to it in between. But the fact of the matter is, they were given this son, John, who was to prepare the way for Jesus Christ. Not only did God give them a child, but he gave them a child that was to make a great difference to the world. In Luke 1:14 it says, "He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth." To think they thought they would never have children. Both were in disbelief. That's where the twist comes in the story. Zechariah actually couldn't speak until the birth of his child, John. The word says, both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. Yet, Elizabeth was barren for so many years. Both were so old before they had their first child. Why was this? What gave them such a character, even though they weren't in a favourable situation as such? It must have been a deeper revelation in God, an attitude of reverence in their relationship with him. Proverbs 8:35 says, "Whoever finds me finds life and obtains favour from the Lord." To obtain favour from the Lord is not always to obtain favour in the ways as you know it, but believe you will obtain favour when it matters most and how it matters most. When God says and how God says. We are always obtaining favour from the Lord, but know that there are times when we think we're obtaining favour from the Lord when we're actually not. I'll use a really extreme example. If I plan out a great operation to rob a bank or rob a jewellery store and I find myself with £100 million, I cannot now go and start giving God praises and saying, "God, I found favour with you." And you know what? I use that extreme example because it can be applied, even though at different degrees, to times in our lives where we go about doing things in our own way and we're like, "Yeah, God has favoured me." But really, are we really obtaining favour from the Lord in the way that he says that we should obtain favour from him? To obey him and obtain favour from him. To follow his decrees and obtain favour from him. I'm not saying that God does not bless us physically, because he does. That he does not bless us with money, that he does not bless us with material things, because he does and he can. But we need to understand it's not always as one would perceive it or one would expect it to be. Our favour comes with our sincerity in our relationship with him. Many times have I seen and also found, even in my own life, that God favours us in the midst of his plan. And it takes a heart of true appreciation to recognize this. God favoured Joseph in the Bible in Pharaoh's home. But Joseph was a slave. He was physically a slave, yet he found favour in the sight of the Lord. Daniel found favour in the sight of the Lord in the midst of his turmoil. God favoured Noah. In the word it says, Noah found favour in the eyes of the Lord. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Listen to this when it comes to Noah. "Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways." Noah was favoured in the sight of God. He and his family were the only people saved from God's wrath. But imagine how it must have been to live on that earth with people with corrupt ways. He was the only man who found favour in the sight of God. He couldn't have lived an easy life. To build that ark, it couldn't have been a breeze. Many times our natural eyes in the natural realm and our natural thinking cause us to think that God blessing us instantly with this and that and the other, physical, material things. Yes, these are not bad in the sight of the Lord. but they are not measures of God's favour. Know that if you are in God's will, no matter how tough or physically difficult it may seem, no matter how many problems or troubles present themselves, you can and you will find favour in whatever you do, in your work, in your studies, in your business, in the year 2014. God bless you.